They took her. But a detective never lets go. Stay until the end, because this story will grip you from the very first moment. My name is Emily, and that night I thought I would never see the world again. The shadows closed in around me when those men grabbed me off the street, their rough hands covering my mouth, their voices sharp and merciless. They dragged me into a cold, abandoned warehouse on the edge of town, where the air smelled of rust and oil, and the darkness pressed in from every corner. Fear was the only thing I could breathe. I don't know how long I sat there, tied to that chair, listening to the echo of their footsteps and their cruel laughter. Hours? A lifetime? Every sound made me flinch, every creak in the walls felt like the end drawing closer. But then, a sound I hadn't expected. Slow, steady, purposeful. Footsteps that didn't belong to them. My heart stuttered as the door creaked open and a tall figure stepped through the gloom, his silhouette cutting across the light spilling from outside. A man in a dark coat, his eyes sharp, scanning the room like a hunter. It was him, the detective. The one who had been looking for me all along. And in that single moment, before he even said a word, I knew my nightmare wasn't going to end with them. It was going to end with him. The detective's gaze locked on me instantly, and for the first time in hours I felt like I could breathe again. His presence filled the room with a kind of authority that even the bandits seemed to recognize, because their laughter cut off sharp, replaced by uneasy silence. One of them stepped forward, trying to mask his fear with bravado. "You're too late, detective," he sneered. "She's ours." But the man in the coat didn't flinch. His voice was calm, steady, almost cold. "Not tonight. Not her." What happened next blurred into chaos, the crash of fists, the groan of wood, the thud of bodies hitting the ground. I could only watch, heart hammering, as he moved with ruthless precision, every strike measured, every step sure. The men who had seemed so terrifying only moments ago fell one by one, their confidence dissolving under his relentless will. And then it was over. The silence returned, broken only by my ragged breathing. He turned to me, his expression softening as he approached. Kneeling down, he cut the ropes from my wrists, his touch surprisingly gentle for someone who had just fought like a storm. "You're safe now," he said quietly, his eyes meeting mine. And for the first time, I believed it. The ropes slipped from my wrists and fell to the dusty floor, leaving faint red marks on my skin. His hands lingered just long enough to make sure I was steady before he helped me rise. My legs trembled, the weight of fear still clinging to me, but when his arms slid around my shoulders, anchoring me, I felt something stronger than terror, relief. I looked up at him, at the sharp lines of his face softened now by concern, and my voice broke as I whispered, "I thought no one would come." His gaze held mine, unwavering, and for a heartbeat it felt like the world had stopped spinning just for us. "I would have torn the city apart before I let them keep you," he answered, his words low, edged with fire and something unspoken. A lump formed in my throat, and I leaned into him, letting his steadiness carry me forward. The warehouse loomed empty behind us, shadows still clinging to its corners, but the moment we stepped outside into the cool night air, it felt like chains had fallen away from me. The stars stretched above, indifferent and endless, yet standing beside him, I realized I wasn't just free, I was found. The night air hit my face like a promise, sharp and cool, washing away the suffocating stench of that warehouse. I staggered a little, but his arm never loosened. He kept me close, his steady stride guiding me forward. Every step away from that place felt unreal, as if the nightmare might still reach out and drag me back, but then I'd catch the sound of his voice, calm and certain, and it reminded me I wasn't alone anymore. We reached his car parked in the shadows, the engine still warm, headlights dimmed. He opened the door for me. His movements precise but careful, like every detail mattered. As I slid into the seat, I looked at him, the way his jaw tightened, the way his eyes scanned the street even now, and I realized this wasn't just duty for him. There was something more, something that went beyond the badge pinned to his chest. When he got in and started the car, silence settled for a moment, broken only by the hum of the engine. My voice trembled as I finally asked, "Why me? Why did you fight so hard?" His hands gripped the wheel, knuckles pale, and then his eyes flicked to mine, burning with an intensity that made my heart stutter. "Because I couldn't stand the thought of losing you," he said quietly. The world outside blurred as the car rolled forward, but all I could focus on was him, the man who had found me in the dark and made me believe in light again. His words echoed inside me, louder than the hum of the tires on the empty road. "I couldn't stand the thought of losing you." My breath caught, and for a moment I forgot about the bruises on my wrists, the ache in my body, even the fear that had clung to me for hours. All that remained was the way he looked at me, steady, unflinching, as if I was the only reason he was still breathing. I turned my face toward the window, but my reflection betrayed me, wide eyes, flushed cheeks, a heart laid bare. "You don't even know me," I whispered, though the words lacked strength. He kept his eyes on the road, but his voice was sure. "I didn't have to." From the moment I saw the case file, I knew I wasn't just chasing another name. I was chasing you. Silence filled the car, heavy and fragile at the same time. I could feel the heat rising inside me, an unfamiliar pull toward the man who had stepped into my nightmare and torn it apart with his bare hands. Finally, I dared to look at him again. His profile was lit by the passing streetlights, strong jaw, furrowed brow, lips pressed tight with determination. And in that fleeting light, I realized the truth: he hadn't just saved me. He had changed something deep inside me, something I didn't yet have the courage to name. I couldn't tear my eyes away from him, from the quiet power in his every movement. The city blurred past outside, but here in the car time slowed, stretched, until it was only the two of us suspended between what had happened and what waited ahead. My voice came out softer than I intended, almost fragile. "If you hadn't found me," I stopped, unable to finish, the memory of cold hands and cruel voices still scraping at the edges of my mind. His grip on the wheel tightened, and his jaw clenched. "Don't," he said firmly, but not unkindly. His eyes flicked to mine, sharp and burning. "I wasn't going to let that happen. I swore I'd get to you. And I did." The finality in his tone made something inside me unravel. My hands trembled, but not from fear this time, from the rush of something dangerously close to relief, to trust, maybe even to longing. I pressed my palms together, trying to steady them, but then I felt his hand cover mine. Warm, solid, grounding. "Emily," he said quietly, my name like an oath on his lips. "You're safe. With me, you always will be." The car kept rolling through the night, but in that moment I knew, the true rescue had only just begun. His hand stayed over mine, steady and protective, and I clung to that warmth as if it were the only real thing left in the world. My chest rose and fell too quickly, the weight of everything that had happened crashing over me, but his touch anchored me, kept me from breaking. I turned to him fully, unable to hold back anymore. The glow of the dashboard lit his face in shades of gold and shadow, and I saw the weariness in his eyes, but also the fierce determination that had carried him through the night to find me. My throat tightened, but the words slipped out before I could stop them. "You didn't just save me," I whispered, voice trembling. "You brought me back to life." For a moment, he didn't speak, his gaze fixed on the dark road ahead. Then he exhaled slowly, and when his eyes flicked to mine, there was something raw, almost vulnerable, in them. "And I'd do it again," he said softly. 1,000 times, if I had to." Tears blurred my vision, but they weren't from fear anymore. I leaned closer, letting my shoulder brush against his, and in that quiet gesture, I felt something bloom inside me, fragile, dangerous, but unstoppable. It wasn't just safety he had given me. It was hope. The hum of the engine filled the silence, but between us it felt like the air was alive, charged with everything unspoken. I stayed close to him, letting my shoulder rest against his arm, afraid that if I moved away, the warmth and certainty he gave me would disappear. My heart still raced, not from terror anymore, but from something I couldn't name, something that scared me in a different way. Streetlights flashed through the windshield, painting fleeting patterns across his face. Every time the light touched him, I caught the same thing in his expression, a storm of restraint, of feelings held back, as if he was fighting not just for me, but with himself. Finally, I found my voice. "You don't have to keep holding on to me," I said, though I prayed he wouldn't let go. His hand tightened over mine, firm and unyielding. "Yes, I do," he replied, his voice low, almost rough. "Because the thought of letting go terrifies me more than anything I faced tonight." The weight of his words sank deep into me, stirring something I had buried under fear and doubt. I turned toward him, searching his eyes, and in that moment the world outside, the city lights, the dark highway, the remnants of danger, all faded. There was only him, and the truth that whatever had begun tonight was far more powerful than either of us had expected. His words left me breathless, echoing louder than the roar of the tires against the road. I stared at him, at the man who had stepped into my nightmare and pulled me out of the shadows, and for the first time I wasn't afraid of what came next. "Terrifies you?" I whispered, my voice almost breaking. He glanced at me then, only for a moment, but the look in his eyes was enough to make my heart stumble. "Because losing you, even for a second, isn't something I could live with," he said, the words raw and unguarded, like he had carried them inside for far too long. I felt tears prick my eyes again, but these weren't tears of weakness. They were born from the truth I suddenly saw, that this wasn't just about saving me, it was about something deeper, something neither of us had planned for. My hand slipped from beneath his and found his arm, holding on tightly. "Then don't," I whispered. "Don't let me go." The car rolled forward into the night, but in that fragile space between fear and freedom, I knew my life had changed forever. The detective hadn't just saved me, he had become the reason I wanted to keep living. The city lights stretched further behind us, swallowed by the night, until it felt like we were driving into a world that belonged only to us. His hand shifted just enough to thread his fingers through mine, firm and steady, and the gesture made my chest ache in the sweetest way. I turned toward him, studying the hard lines of his profile, softened now by the glow of passing lamps. For the first time I saw beyond the detective, beyond the badge and the strength. I saw the man, weary, scarred by battles I could only imagine, yet unwilling to let go of me even for a breath. "I don't know what happens tomorrow," I admitted, my voice trembling, "but I know I don't want to face it without you." His jaw tightened, and when he looked at me, the heat in his eyes left no room for doubt. Then you won't. From this moment on, Emily, you're not alone. Not ever again. Something in me broke then, not from fear, but from the overwhelming relief of finally being seen, of being chosen. I leaned closer, resting my head against his shoulder, and felt his hand shift to hold mine tighter still. The night might have stolen everything from me, but sitting beside him now, I realized it had also given me something greater, a bond forged in darkness, unshakable, unbreakable, and entirely ours. The rhythm of the road beneath us was steady, but inside me everything trembled with a fragile intensity. Resting against his shoulder, I could hear the steady beat of his heart, each pulse reminding me that I wasn't dreaming, that I had truly been pulled out of the shadows. His scent, leather, steel, and something distinctly his, wrapped around me, grounding me in the present. He adjusted his grip on the wheel, but his free hand never let go of mine. His thumb traced slow, absent circles against my skin, a simple touch that carried more comfort than words ever could. I closed my eyes, letting myself sink into it, and for the first time since this nightmare began, I felt safe. "You're trembling less," he murmured, his voice a low promise in the quiet car. I swallowed hard, the truth pushing its way past my lips. "Because you're here. Because I know you won't let me fall." He glanced down at me, and for a fleeting moment his mask of control cracked. I caught a glimpse of something raw, something unguarded. "Never," he said simply, with a conviction that made my chest tighten. The night stretched endlessly ahead, but with his arm brushing mine and his hand clasped firmly around my own, it no longer felt like a road leading away from fear. It felt like the beginning of something I never dared hope for, a future where I wasn't just surviving, but finally living. The hum of the engine faded into the background, becoming nothing more than a lullaby to the storm inside me. I lifted my head from his shoulder, drawn by something stronger than fear or exhaustion. His eyes were on the road, sharp and focused, but when I looked at him, he seemed to sense it. His gaze shifted, just for a moment, and met mine. The world stilled. The passing lights painted fleeting gold across his face, catching in the lines of weariness, the edges of determination, and something else, something he wasn't trying to hide anymore. It was a look that told me I was more than just a case, more than someone he had pulled from the dark. "I don't know how to thank you," I whispered, my voice breaking with the weight of everything I couldn't say. His fingers tightened around mine, warm and unyielding. "You don't have to," he said, low and steady. "Just don't look at me like I'm going to disappear when this night ends." Those words struck deeper than any wound I had carried. My throat tightened, tears threatening again, but this time I didn't look away. Instead, I let him see all of it, the fear, the gratitude, and the fragile thread of hope tying me to him. "I won't," I breathed, the promise trembling from my lips. And in that moment, somewhere between the shadows of the city and the open road ahead, I realized that what he had given me wasn't just freedom from the bandits. He had given me the chance to start again, with him at my side. His grip on my hand softened, his thumb brushing gently across my skin, as if sealing the vow we'd just exchanged. The road stretched out before us in silver ribbons of moonlight, endless and uncertain, but somehow I wasn't afraid anymore. Not with him beside me. For so long I had believed rescue meant escape, from chains, from fear, from darkness. But as I sat there, watching the steady curve of his jaw, listening to the quiet strength in his breath, I realized it was more than that. Rescue meant being seen, being chosen, being protected not just in the moment of danger, but in the fragile silence that followed. "Emily," he said suddenly, his voice low but clear, as if testing the sound of my name again. It sent a shiver through me. "You're stronger than you think. Don't forget that." I turned to him, my heart aching with the weight of everything we'd endured. "Maybe," I whispered. "But tonight, I only survived because of you." His eyes flicked to mine, a shadow of a smile tugging at his lips, though it didn't reach the depth of his gaze. "Then maybe we saved each other." The words hung between us, delicate and dangerous, and I held them close, knowing they would stay with me long after the night was gone. Whatever tomorrow held, this moment was ours, carved from fear, bound by courage, and sealed with something I was only beginning to understand. The quiet stretched between us, not empty, but full of everything we hadn't said. Everything that pulsed beneath our words. The rhythm of the tires on the asphalt was steady, like a heartbeat carrying us forward. I let my gaze linger on him, memorizing every detail, the sharp set of his jaw, the way his shoulders remained tense even now, the protective glance he gave me every few seconds as if to make sure I was still there. My chest tightened, and I leaned a little closer, my voice barely more than a breath. "What happens now?" He hesitated, his eyes fixed on the road ahead. "Now," he said slowly, "I take you somewhere safe. Somewhere they'll never touch you again." His hand tightened around mine, firm and grounding. "And if you'll let me, I stay." The words stole the air from my lungs. I turned to face him fully, the glow of the passing streetlights catching in his eyes, and I saw it there, the same pull that had taken root in me. It was fierce, unshakable, and terrifying in its honesty. "You've already stayed," I whispered, my throat thick with emotion. "From the moment you walked through that door." His lips curved into the faintest smile, but his eyes held me like a promise. "Then I'll never leave." And as the night unfolded before us, endless and unknown, I realized that the rescue was no longer just about survival. It was about two broken souls who had found each other in the darkest of hours, and chosen not to let go. The road stretched on, a dark ribbon under the silver glow of the moon, but for me there was no fear left in the shadows, not with his hand holding mine so firmly. Every mile we put between us and that warehouse felt like a thread cutting me free, stitch by stitch, from the nightmare I had been trapped in. I let my head rest against the seat, but my eyes never left him. There was something in the way he carried himself even now, alert, protective, as though danger still lingered, and yet beneath that sharp focus was a tenderness he tried to hide. I could feel it in every glance, every touch that lingered longer than it needed to. "I don't know how to start over," I admitted softly, my voice breaking in the quiet. "I don't even know who I am after tonight." He shifted, his free hand tightening on the wheel, and then his gaze found mine for just a heartbeat. "Then let me help you remember," he said. "Not who they tried to break, but who you really are." The words sank into me like warmth after a long winter. Tears blurred my vision, but I didn't look away. I couldn't. Because in his eyes, I saw not just the man who had pulled me from darkness, I saw the man who could teach me how to live again. And in that moment, I realized that maybe the end of this nightmare wasn't just freedom. Maybe it was the beginning of something I had been waiting for all my life. His words settled into me like an anchor, steadying the storm that had raged inside since the moment they took me. I turned slightly in my seat, my hand still caught in his, and for the first time since everything began, I let myself truly breathe. The city lights faded into the distance, replaced by quiet roads lined with trees. The night air through the half-open window was cool against my skin, carrying with it the faint scent of pine and earth, freedom, raw and untamed. I closed my eyes for a second, and when I opened them again, he was watching me out of the corner of his eye, as if making sure I hadn't slipped away. "You don't have to carry this alone anymore," he said quietly, the hum of the engine filling the silence that followed. "Not as long as I'm here." My throat tightened, emotion swelling until I could barely form the words. "And if one day you decide to walk away?" I asked, afraid of the answer, yet needing to hear it. His jaw clenched, and he shook his head, the certainty in his voice unshakable. "Then I wouldn't be the man who found you tonight. I don't save someone just to leave them broken again." I stared at him, at the fierce conviction in every line of his face, and I felt the fragile walls I had built around myself finally crumble. He hadn't just pulled me from danger, he had given me something even rarer. A reason to believe in tomorrow. I held his words close, letting them sink deeper than I ever thought possible. My fingers tightened around his, afraid that if I let go, this fragile new reality might vanish into the night. The steady rhythm of the tires on the road became a heartbeat, and with each passing mile, the fear that had chained me seemed to fade further away. When I looked at him again, I noticed the exhaustion behind his eyes, the weight of every choice he'd made to bring me here. Yet even in that fatigue there was something unwavering, a strength that wasn't just for the badge he wore, but for me. Only me. I leaned closer, my voice a trembling whisper. "You didn't just save me from them, you saved me from myself." His grip on my hand tightened, his jaw set as though the confession struck him harder than any fight could. For a long moment he said nothing, his eyes fixed on the dark stretch of road ahead. But then, softly, firmly, he answered, "No, Emily. You saved yourself. I just refused to let you be alone when you did it." Tears welled again, but they were different this time. Not from fear, not from pain, but from the warmth spreading through me, the realization that somewhere in the ruins of tonight, something new had begun. Something fragile. Something undeniable. And as I let my head rest lightly against his shoulder, I knew the truth. The nightmare was over, but the story between us had only just begun. The night wrapped around us like a secret, the empty road stretching endlessly ahead, but inside the car everything felt changed, charged with something unspoken yet undeniable. His shoulder was solid beneath my cheek, the steady rise and fall of his breath a rhythm I could lose myself in. For the first time since the world had been ripped from under me, I wasn't clinging to life. I was choosing it. He didn't move, didn't break the fragile moment, as though he knew I needed this stillness more than words. Yet even in silence, the weight of everything unsaid pressed between us, gratitude, trust, and that dangerous spark neither of us dared name. Finally, I lifted my head just enough to look at him. The faint glow of the dashboard lit his features in soft lines, and I saw more than the detective, more than the man who had fought in the dark for me. I saw someone who had chosen me, not out of duty, but out of something far deeper. "I don't know how to move forward after tonight," I admitted, my voice raw but steady. He turned his gaze to me, only for a second, but it was enough to set my heart racing. "Then let me be there when you take the first step," he said simply, his thumb brushing over my knuckles like a vow. And in that moment, I understood, I wasn't just rescued. I was found. The road finally opened into the quiet glow of the city, but for me the world had already shifted. His hand never left mine, and in that touch was everything: strength, safety, and a promise I hadn't dared dream of. I turned to him one last time, my heart no longer trembling with fear but alive with something new, something fierce. He glanced back, and for the first time since the night began, a small, unguarded smile touched his lips. "It's over," he said softly. "You're free." I leaned into him, letting the words sink into me like sunlight after a storm. Free, yes, but also bound, not by fear, but by the connection forged in the darkest hours. And as the night gave way to dawn, I knew this was more than the end of my nightmare. It was the beginning of us.